A24's latest film, The Drama, is in theaters now, starring Robert Pattinson and Zendaya. You know, before this movie came out, if you said your favorite A24 film was The Drama, it would sound like you were just trying to fake your way through the conversation. Hey, what's your favorite A24 film? Oh, I don't know. The Drama? Hello everybody, I'm Dan Murrell here with my review of The Drama, which is the latest A24 dark comedy-ish film, starring Robert Pattinson and Zendaya as a couple just days away from their wedding whose future is thrown into uncertainty after a revelation from the past. It's written and directed by Christopher Borgli, whose last film, Dream Scenario, had a great concept that, in my opinion, ultimately ran out of steam. Ironically, in a film about shocking revelations, Borgli has faced criticism recently over a resurfaced 2012 essay where he detailed a relationship that he had with a 17-year-old girl when he was 27. While this relationship was legal in Norway, the essay details his friends and society's disapproval of it and his unabashed decision to proceed with it anyway. I know that many people may choose not to see this film because of that, and I understand that decision. I find it more than troubling myself, but I also recognize that The Drama reflects the work of hundreds of other people in front of and behind the camera, so I decided to review it anyway with that disclaimer. The Drama revolves around a particularly consequential wedding menu tasting between Pattinson and Zendaya's Charlie and Emma and their best friends Rachel and Mike, played by Alana Haim and Mamadou Ache. When the group decides to share the worst thing they've ever done, Emma's answer makes them all reevaluate their relationships with her. Now, I don't want to give away what Emma did, but a lot of my thoughts revolve specifically around that. So what I'm going to do is finish this review spoiler-free. Then I'm going to do a little spoiler talk at the end if you want to stick around. What I can say is that if you're expecting this movie to be a salacious taboo buster, that's not really what it is. The marketing smartly hasn't revealed Emma's secret, but I worry that a lot of people may walk into this film expecting it to center around sex or something equally lurid. The Drama is much more serious, despite having a lot of moments of black comedy, and I think it's helpful to at least know what you're getting into. I could see this being a polarizing film, but in an interesting way, a way that's going to spur a lot of interesting conversations after the movie is over. The Drama's success revolves around its two leads, Pattinson and Zendaya. Pattinson's Charlie is a somewhat meek Brit who opens the film trying to nail down the speech that he's going to give at his wedding, and this is also a helpful framing device to feed us some backstory on the couple and how they met. A lot of the editing in this film is non-linear, as we learn about each character whenever certain topics come up in conversation, and I actually thought that it helped keep the first part of the story fresh instead of just going into the rom-com tropes. Zendaya's Emma is a bit more of an enigma. We mainly see her through Charlie's eyes at first, and it's only after her revelation that we begin to understand more about her. Even though the film revolves around her past, I still feel that she was a little underdeveloped in the movie, which I'm going to go to a bit more in the spoiler section. What depth she has largely comes from Zendaya's performance, which I think is the best one in the film, but it's Charlie's struggle with her secret that receives the lion's share of the focus. And Pattinson also turns in a great performance. He may have more to work with, but a lot is asked of him, and he delivers. The two main supporting performances are from Ache and Haim, who flit in and out of the action following the revelation. Ache mainly gets the supportive best friend role, but Haim really gets to sink her teeth into one of the most unlikable movie characters in recent memory. I understood her motivation in the film, but that did not justify a lot of her actions. And by the way, her being unlikable is not a criticism of the film. Most of these characters are unlikable in some way, but Haim takes the cake. The Drama shares some DNA with Dream Scenario in that I think the premise of the film is perhaps better than the execution, but I do think that the execution here is better than what we saw in Dream Scenario. By keeping the film fairly intimate, the movie doesn't spin things too far out of control, and we mainly stay focused on Charlie and Emma. I can imagine a version where things spin wildly out of control, descending the whole movie into total chaos, but there is only one subplot involving Charlie that felt like too much to me. The rest is about how these two people attempt to save a relationship that's been completely recontextualized, especially as Charlie revisits the past through a new lens. I walked in expecting The Drama to go big, but I actually didn't mind that it went small. Like many A24 films, I fear that the marketing may be setting up a false expectation, but if you go in expecting strong performances and a more character-focused film, I think you might be a little bit better off. I don't think this movie entirely meets its potential, but it kept me locked in throughout, and Zendaya and Pattinson's performances really seal the deal. So ultimately, I'm giving the drama a low grade, it's good score, even though I think that it had a much higher ceiling. And with that, I want to get into some spoiler territory, so if you don't want to know any more about the film, and if you plan to see it, I advise that you go in unspoiled. Tune out now and maybe come back later. If you've already seen the movie or you want to know what the big secret is, keep watching. So the reason I wanted to get into Emma's secret is that I feel like personal experience played a big role in my feelings about the film, and I'm about to reveal that secret. So this is your final warning. The bombshell that drops is that Emma, as a teenager who was bullied and felt isolated from her classmates, planned to carry out a mass shooting at her high school and only failed to go through with it because of another local shooting, which rallied the students to form an anti-violence group that allowed Emma to find the acceptance and belonging among her peers that she'd been missing. Charlie worries that he might be marrying a psychopath, and Alana Haim's Rachel rejects Emma because her cousin was a victim of a mass shooting. Now, I've spoken about this before, but my junior high years were particularly rough, especially 7th grade. I was a chubby kid, and some days were absolute hell on earth for me. Now, I never even considered doing anything like what young Emma plans to do in this movie. I just escaped into movies and Star Trek. And Columbine didn't even happen until a few years after the worst of these feelings had passed for me, meaning that I truly grew up in a different era. But I do understand the pain and isolation you can feel at that age when you're unpopular, when you feel like a complete outsider. And a key factor in this movie is how, following Emma's revelation, absolutely no one in her life, including her fiance, even tries to understand why Emma felt the way she did or practice even the smallest amount of empathy. Of course, what she planned to do would have been, if she carried it out, a horrific and unforgivable act. But this is mostly a movie about a group of people who are so incapable of seeing beyond their own self-interests that they re-traumatize someone whom they supposedly love. Now, this partially works in the movie's favor. As I said, this is often a pitch black comedy, and there are some laughs to be had at how clueless and over the top the reaction to Emma's secret is, but there's a fine line when it comes to these things, and the drama doesn't always fall on the right side of it. Like Dream's scenario, it sometimes can't decide what it wants to be: a satire, a comedy, a hard-hitting character drama. You can be all of those things, but the modulation has to be just right, and the drama sometimes feels a little out of sync. Perhaps because I could sympathize with the pain that Emma was being forced to relive and often justify, I felt like she was given short shrift as a character. We see many shades of Charlie, but Emma is often just the girl who is almost a murderer and might be crazy. That's where I think the film fails to hit its potential. If Emma had been more well developed, I think the film might have worked better. But to truly dive deeper into Emma's character, you have to get more serious. And I think that Christopher Borgli wanted to stay more in the morbid comedy realm, which meant more focus on the reactions to Emma's pain instead of the pain itself. That's one reason why I was so impressed with Zendaya's performance. She's able to bring to her role, through her performance, a lot of what I think is missing on the page. Pattinson gets a lot of scripted notes to hit and hits them well, but Zendaya has to do more work between the lines, and I think that she does it incredibly well. It's difficult to make the character who almost committed a mass murder the only character in a movie who you actually like. But Emma, to me, is unquestionably the protagonist of the movie, with a lot of others competing to see who you dislike more. I think this film is more of an indictment on Charlie's inability to understand complex emotions and have a meaningful conversation with his fiancée than it is of Emma's past. However, I could see audiences siding with a few different characters in the movie, and I would love to see how opinions of the film vary depending on which character that is. Ultimately, the drama is a complicated film, and I actually like complicated films. However, I think that complication could have been juggled more effectively than it is. At the same time, the reason I'm giving it the It's Good rating is because complicated doesn't necessarily mean bad, and I think that we almost get to the finish line with this movie if the character of Emma had been bulked up a little bit more. But like I said, I can see opinions varying widely on the film, so if you've seen the drama, what did you think? Let me know down in the comments below. And as always, stay tuned right here for the latest in movie news, reviews, box office, and more. Until next time, stay safe, and I'll see you then. Bye.